So with the season resuming this upcoming Tuesday, I thought it would be best for me to come and talk about some players that have the most to prove this upcoming year. Because as I look around the NBA, last year so many players stepped up in the playoffs and proved why they're looked at in such high regard. You had Jamal Murray, who was fantastic in the bubble, giving the Nuggets justification for putting faith in him to be the second co-star to Nikola Jokic. And speaking of second co-stars, you got Anthony Davis, who before the season even started last year, many people questioned his greatness and how he would fit alongside LeBron James, mainly due to his health. Now a year later, he is a champion. He hit one of the best shots in the playoffs last year, a game winner against the Denver Nuggets in the conference finals, and he has shown why the Lakers gave up so many assets in order to get him, because he is arguably the second best player in the NBA alongside his co-star in LeBron James. But without further ado, let's talk about some of the players that are on the other side of the coin. We're going to talk about the losers, the guys who failed, whether in the playoffs last year or regular season, and have something to prove this upcoming year. But without further ado, make sure you go and check out the latest episode of the Overtime Podcast. We dropped it on all platforms. We ranked the top 50 players in the NBA. A lot of people had a mix of opinions. A card should be on the screen to the video. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter. The links are down below in the description box. But without further ado, let's get back to the topic at hand with the 5 players that have the most to prove this upcoming year. Coming in at number 5, we have the one and only Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is one of the better scorers in the NBA and one of the best point guards in the league as well. And due to a very shaky postseason, especially in the second and third round, in which he averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists on 42% shooting from the field, but only 31% from behind the arc, many people's opinions around Kemba Walker has changed drastically. I've heard people say that Kemba Walker isn't even a top 10 point guard anymore, to the point that some people have said he's not even a top 50 player. And though I strongly disagree with the latter part of that statement, I can agree with the reasoning of Kemba Walker standing in the NBA shifting in a dramatic fashion, because considering the fact that the Celtics gave him a 4-year contract that is worth $141 million to go to the postseason, bubble or not, injury or not, and to play as bad as he played, that was unacceptable. Defensively, he was a target for anyone on the opposing team, and offensively, considering that he wasn't that efficient, his other inefficiencies such as defense and his lack of playmaking in comparison to a lot of his counterparts were exploited that much more. So as far as next year goes, Kemba's got to find ways to be effective other than as a scorer, whether that means stepping up on the defensive end or as a playmaker. It's clear that offensively the Celtics don't struggle to put the ball in the basket with the multitude of shot creators that they have at their disposal. So he has to find other ways to be effective other than the way that he's been effective throughout his entire career. That's what makes good players great. So hopefully Kemba can take that next step. But moving on to the next player that we have on this list, we got Toronto's own Pascal Siakam. Now, in the case of Siakam, it's kind of weird to say he has something to prove when he is an NBA champion. But considering last year in the bubble, he had one of the worst performances that I have ever seen, and I'm not going to get into too much depth about how bad he was because I have a video about it. I'd say he has a lot to prove this upcoming season, because it's not about what he did in the regular season or what he's about to do this upcoming regular season. It's about what you're going to do for me come playoff time. Because with how bad he was last year in the playoffs, no one's going to care about his potential all-star appearance or his all-NBA selection that he could receive. It's all about what you're going to do for me come postseason time. And with the Raptors losing a couple key players in their front court defense such as Ibaka and Gasol, Siakam is even going to have a little bit more responsibility on the defensive side of the ball as he is a front court player. So regardless of how you look at Siakam, whether you think he's not a top 20 player or not, the Raptors have trusted him to be the face of their franchise, or at least one of the faces of their franchise, as they did give him a max extension last summer. So it really doesn't matter what we think, it's about what the organization thinks. And Masai Ujiri has put a lot of faith in Siakam to take that next step, so maybe next year will be the year that he does so, because he needs to do it desperately. But moving on to player number 3 that we got on this list, we have Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is easily one of the more polarizing players in the NBA community. You have one side of the community that thinks he's trash because he just won't take a shot outside of the restricted area, and then you have the other side of the community that believes Ben Simmons is actually a pretty good player that doesn't get enough credit for what he can do and gets too much hate because of what he can't do. Because outside of his lack of a jump shot, he is an elite defender and has the potential to be the Defensive Player of the Year winner one day, as soon as next year, crazy to think about it. He's also an elite passer, a good playmaker in transition, and he's a pretty good rebounder. So with all things being considered, Simmons still finds ways to be impactful outside of his lack of a perimeter shot. So if that's the case, why is he on the list? And to that, my answer is simple. Where has his greatness led him to? We need to start having this conversation about Simmons because it's not like he's a bust. I'm not going to call him that. Simmons is already an All-NBA defender and one of the best perimeter players in the league despite his lack of a jump shot. So that should tell you the talent that he does have. But let's not forget that this man was compared to Magic Johnson and LeBron James when he entered the NBA. And when those guys came in the league, they did not have a jump shot just like Simmons. But the difference is they weren't afraid to take them. Simmons, at a certain point in time, if you want to play the point guard so bad and you want to initiate offense, then you need to take those threes. You can't be a primary ball handler and not even attempt them. Yes, Giannis is a power forward and he doesn't always have the ball, but his game is perimeter oriented, so he has to at least attempt threes. Simmons, you're never going to take that next step as a player if you don't at least try to evolve your game. So as of next year, my only request for Ben Simmons, as sad as this may sound, is just to attempt 1 3 a game. It could be a corner three, top of the key, I could care less. Just take 1 a game. It will not kill you. Besides, this is potentially your last year with Joel Embiid anyways, and you know Harden is just knocking on the door, and Daryl Morey will be glad to open it anytime soon. And with the shooters that you have at your disposal this year in comparison to last season, I expect you to at least be a 20-point per game scorer. So yeah, get your shit together, Ben, because you desperately need to, probably more than anybody else on this list. But before we move on to our final 2 selections, it's time for me to give my shout out to Official BBALL University, because for those who do not know, I make some of the best articles in the world and you need to check them out. The links are in the description box, but I could not be able to do that without the platform known as Official BBALL University. They put out great articles, they have the latest news updates around the league, and they also just dropped some rankings of the top 50 players in the NBA. Make sure you go and check that out. The link is in the description box down below. But without further ado, let's get back to the topic at hand and talk about the final 2 players. Coming in at number 2, we have this Slim Reaper, Kevin Durant. Now I know a lot of people are going to be saying, yo, why do you have KD on this list? This guy is a 2-time Finals MVP, 2-time NBA champion, a former league MVP. What does he have left to prove? Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna just sit here and act like a lot of people do nowadays that KD didn't just go join the best team in the league, stack his ring finger, and then leave. You don't just get to do that and I give you so much credit as if you built that team. No, that team won without you. That team made the finals without you. That team, guess what? They beat you after you and Russell Westbrook were up 3-1 on that team. So regardless of what people want to say, Kevin Durant still needs to prove to me that he can win a championship when the deck is not so stacked heavily, and I mean all-time heavily, in his favor. Because if he can't do that, I can't put him in conversations with players like Kobe Bryant, Larry Bird, LeBron James, Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan. He potentially can never make the top 10 without something like that. So yeah, a ring in Brooklyn would definitely seal the cake. But without further ado, let's move on to our final entrant, and I think this should be fairly self-explanatory. It is Paul motherfucking George. This guy is easily the most, and I mean easily, the most hated player in the NBA. It's not even close, and it is for good reason. It seems like no matter what the circumstances are, whether he has to be some kind of carry guy in Indiana or it's him in OKC alongside a former MVP in Russell Westbrook, or it's him with the Clippers alongside a finals MVP in Kawhi Leonard. No matter what the situation or circumstance is, PG goes into the postseason and underperforms. And what's crazy is my prediction for the year is that he's going to have an amazing regular season and go in the playoffs and play like shit, just like he does every single year on cue. It feels like it's obvious that Paul George mentally is one of the weakest stars in the history of the league. To go on Instagram and drop some middle school ass quote and then turn your comment section off, and all of a sudden that's when you put it together until a game 7 where you clank a 3 off the side of the backboard, that goes to show that your mind is not in the right place. You are an NBA player being paid millions of dollars. Matter of fact, you just got a supermax worth over $200 million. Whether he deserves it or not, Paul George, the Clippers are trusting you to be the face, or at least one of the faces of their franchise. They want to retire your jersey in the rafters one day. They gave up a shitload of their entire future over the next half decade, all for you. So you need to step up, rise above all the hate and criticism, including my own, and prove us wrong. Show us why we had faith in you to begin with, Paul George, because if you can't do that, you're going to be another Tracy McGrady, who people talk about their regular season moments, but when it comes to the playoffs, there's absolutely nothing to talk about because you gave us nothing to talk about. Actually, let me not do him too dirty. He at least went to the conference finals and battled LeBron James. But what's crazy is that you might have peaked in that series. But hey, that's a topic for another discussion. Let me know y'all's opinions in the comment section down below. Also, do not forget to hit that subscribe button and push the bell for post notifications. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description box down below. Y'all make sure you stay safe and have a great day. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. Peace.